You have been living under a quiet, exhausting illusion for most of your life. The belief that if you simply follow the rules, avoid making mistakes, and secure the perfect score, the world will reward you. It is a comforting lie, one designed to keep you safe, obedient, and predictable. But reality operates on a completely different frequency. You have likely noticed it. The people who never seem to care about the rules, the ones who failed openly, are often the ones who achieve the freedom you secretly desire. This is not an accident or a flaw in the system. It is a psychological mechanism. Today, we are going to dismantle the invisible prison of perfection. You will understand why the fear of judgment is the exact chain holding you back, and why those who have nothing to lose are the ones who ultimately win. From a very young age, you were conditioned to tie your entire sense of identity to a flawless record. Every test, every assignment, every expectation was a measure of your worth. A minor misstep did not just feel like a mistake, it felt like a catastrophic failure of who you are. This relentless pursuit of the perfect grade forces you into a state of chronic defense, where avoiding an error becomes more important than actually learning. You are trained to preserve your status at all costs. This creates a paralyzing psychological aversion to the unknown. You become exceptional at following directions, executing clear instructions, and playing within the boundaries that others have drawn for you. But in the process, you lose the ability to navigate without a map. The system rewards you for your compliance, for being an excellent follower of rules, but it secretly strips away the audacity required to create rules of your own in the real world. This is the invisible boundary you must recognize. It is not discipline that keeps you coloring inside the lines. It is self-imposed confinement driven by the fear of being wrong. Breaking free from this pattern requires a fundamental acceptance. A perfect score does not exist outside the walls of an institution. Real progress demands that you stop protecting an imaginary reputation and start risking your carefully crafted image for the sake of genuine growth. And once you notice this pattern, another one becomes easier to see. You still wake up every day as if there is a test to pass. You approach your career, your relationships, and your ambitions searching for a hidden syllabus. You operate under the false premise that if you simply study the manual and memorize the right steps, life will hand you a passing grade. You are constantly searching for permission and validation from an authority figure that no longer exists. Because of this phantom exam, you hesitate. You overanalyze every major decision, terrified of selecting the wrong answer on a multiple choice sheet. You watch others advance while you remain stuck in the planning phase, trying to guarantee a flawless execution. Your obsession with being correct turns into a masterclass in avoidance. The fear of getting burned keeps you standing on the edge, constantly preparing for a moment that never arrives. You thought you needed more preparation, you needed less noise. The absolute truth is that in the real world, there is no final grade. There is only uncertainty, chaos, and the raw necessity of taking action without having all the information. You must stop waiting for a pristine moment. Taking control means accepting that you will make choices with incomplete data and trusting your ability to handle the consequences when the answers are messy. Look closely at the people who never cared about maintaining a flawless record, the ones dismissed as careless or unteachable. They navigate the world with an immense psychological advantage. They lack the heavy burden of a perfect reputation. When you're not constantly trying to defend your status as the smartest person in the room, the ego softens. You no longer tie your personal value to being right every single time. They are completely accustomed to falling. For them, an error is not a devastating verdict on their intelligence. It is merely a result. It is just one more attempt. Because they are comfortable looking foolish, they are free to experiment, to risk failure, and to try repeatedly. While you are emotionally exhausted from trying to maintain an illusion, they are rapidly testing what works and discarding what does not. This is where most people confuse comfort with progress. They believe safety is found in perfection, but true security is found in adaptability. The underdog succeeds because they have a fluid mentality, a quiet recognition that a failure today is simply the groundwork for tomorrow. To replicate this, you must willingly surrender your need to appear invincible. Let go of the heavy armor of perfection and step into the arena, lightweight and ready to learn. The next part is quieter, but more important. Society maintains a polite fiction that knowledge is power, but raw theoretical knowledge is a stagnant currency if it is never spent. The world does not compensate you for what you know in your head, it compensates you for what you are willing to execute. Reality is beautifully indifferent to your intellect. It only responds to friction, to movement, and to the undeniable force of bold action. This means the real currency of life is courage. It is the nerve to launch that project without a safety net, to have the difficult conversation, to stand back up after being completely knocked down. While the good student is paralyzed by the fear of being burned, someone with half the talent is taking aggressive action. They are advancing not because they are superior, but because they are willing to pay the emotional toll of being uncomfortable. This is not discipline. This is self-respect. You must shift your internal metric from how much you know to how much you're willing to try. You have to trade the illusion of safety for the vitality of the arena. When you stop hoarding your potential and start spending it through decisive action, your reality begins to bend. It is no longer about avoiding the fire, it is about learning how to walk through it without losing your center. We arrive at a profound error in human programming. You have been taught to view a mistake as a blemish, a dark mark that must be hidden or deeply regretted. We organize our lives entirely around the avoidance of getting things wrong, but this is a catastrophic misunderstanding of how growth actually occurs. An error is not a character flaw, it is a fundamental mechanism of discovery. It is the only way the mind learns to calibrate to reality. Consider every massive leap in history. None of them emerged perfectly formed on the first attempt. They were built on mountains of failed experiments and discarded theories. When you treat an error as a defeat, you shrink your world. You stop innovating. You stay entirely within the small radius of things you already know you can do perfectly, effectively putting an artificial ceiling on your own capability and your own life. The real cost is not what you lost. It is who you became while ignoring it. The shift is practical. You must start viewing your mistakes purely as data. They are the raw, unfiltered feedback telling you exactly what requires adjustment. A failure is no longer a stop sign, it is a directional arrow. When you neutralize the emotional weight of getting it wrong, you unlock a terrifying level of freedom. You transform from someone trying to survive the test into the architect of the experiment. The next shift is simple, but not easy. When you constantly try to protect your perfect image, you create a massive internal leak of emotional energy. You spend more hours managing how others perceive you than actually doing the work. The ego becomes a fragile glass shield. It looks impressive, but it shatters at the slightest impact. This constant defensive posture leaves you exhausted, anxious, and deeply disconnected from your authentic self. You see this in your daily habits. You refuse to ask for help because it implies weakness. You avoid starting a new venture or stepping into a new social circle because the possibility of looking foolish feels like physical pain. Over time, you begin to shrink your life to fit only the things you can control, flawlessly. The ultimate cost is that you sacrifice your vast potential just to keep your pride completely intact. Most of the damage did not happen in one moment, it happened through repetition. To break this, you must willingly let your ego take the hit. True strength is not the absence of humiliation, it is the capacity to endure it without losing your sense of direction. When you stop obsessing over your image, you free up massive amounts of mental bandwidth to focus purely on execution and actual undeniable progress. And once you notice this pattern, another one becomes easier to see. The hardest battle you will fight is not learning new skills, but actively dismantling the deeply ingrained habits of your early education. School rewarded you for sitting completely still, raising your hand, and waiting patiently to be picked by an authority figure. It programmed you to be a passive receiver of instructions rather than an active creator of outcomes. In adult life, waiting to be picked guarantees that you will be left behind and forgotten. You see people sitting in their jobs for years, silently hoping a promotion falls into their lap. They wait for the perfect moment, the right mentor, or clear permission to step up. This passive dependency breeds a deep, quiet resentment. You watch less capable people move past you simply because they decided to move while you decided to wait. But here's the part people usually miss. No one is coming to hand you a syllabus or tell you exactly what to do next. You must give yourself the permission you're desperately seeking from others. It is time to step out of the waiting room. The transition from student to master requires you to stop asking for the roadmap and start carving the path yourself, even when you have no idea where it leads. This brings us to a much quieter trap, one that masquerades as productivity. Endless preparation is how intelligent people sabotage themselves without feeling guilty. You disguise your fear of failure as necessary research. You buy another book, sign up for another masterclass, and consume more tutorials, convincing yourself that you just need a little more information before you're truly ready to begin. The emotional consequence is a state of chronic underlying anxiety. You feel incredibly busy, but you produce absolutely nothing of value. You are walking on a mental treadmill, burning massive amounts of energy, while staying in the exact same place. You become an expert in the theory of doing things, while your actual life remains entirely unchanged. Preparation becomes a highly sophisticated form of procrastination. You thought you needed more motivation. You needed less noise. The shift is brutal but necessary. You must cut the research phase short and force yourself into the execution phase. Action is the only mechanism that generates real, lasting confidence. When you stop planning for every possible disaster and start dealing with the reality in front of you, you realize you are much more capable of handling friction than you thought. Slow down here. When you finally stop preparing for an exam that does not exist, you must face the raw chaos of reality. The real world is disorganized, unfair, completely unscripted, and deeply unpredictable. It does not respect your carefully color-coded spreadsheets or your meticulously crafted 5-year plans. It throws variables at you that no textbook or professor could ever anticipate or prepare you for. Good students despise this chaos because they cannot control it. When a plan fails, they experience a complete emotional collapse because their entire identity was firmly attached to the plan working perfectly. They freeze, desperately trying to force the messy reality back into their neat, organized boxes, but the world does not bend to your desire for order. Fighting the chaos only leads to frustration and bitter exhaustion. The real cost is not what you lost. It is who you became while ignoring it. You must learn to surf the chaos rather than trying to control the ocean. Your focus must shift from attempting to control external events to building an unbreakable internal order. When your mind is clear and your reactions are disciplined, the external unpredictability is no longer a threat. It becomes a vast landscape of raw opportunity. But peace does not come from avoiding pressure. It comes from responding differently. The underdog, the one who constantly failed early on, thrives in chaos because they have built emotional calluses through sheer, brutal repetition. They understand that resilience is not a magical genetic trait or a sudden burst of inspiration. It is a biological adaptation to repeated stress and continuous calculated failure. Every time you get knocked down, embarrassed, or defeated, and you force yourself to stand back up, you are literally rewiring your nervous system. You are teaching your brain that failure is not fatal. Over time, the thing that used to paralyze you with terror becomes entirely mundane. The fear loses its grip. You stop sweating the small mistakes because you have survived much worse, and you know you can survive again. This is not about blind positivity or toxic motivation. This is about physical and emotional endurance. You strip away the paralyzing fear of failure by exposing yourself to it until it becomes boring. That is how you master the game. You trade the fragile glass armor of the perfect student for the scarred, hardened reality of someone who simply refuses to quit. And this is where true, unshakable clarity begins. The next part is quieter, but more important. Once you survive the initial shock of chaos, a profound internal shift must occur. You have to discard the fixed identity that school handed to you. The belief that you are simply a smart person who must constantly prove their intelligence is a heavy anchor. It keeps you locked in a defensive posture, terrified that one misstep will expose you as a fraud. When your identity is rigid, every piece of critical feedback feels like a personal attack. You spend your energy defending your past rather than building your future. You become brittle. When a branch is too rigid, the wind snaps it. That is exactly what the modern world does to people who refuse to adapt. They break under the weight of their own inflexible expectations and fragile self-image. This is not discipline. This is self-respect. You must build a fluid identity, an identity based not on what you already know, but on your relentless capacity to learn new things. When you define yourself by your resilience rather than your perfection, you become completely unshakable. You no longer fear the unknown, because your core strength comes from your ability to navigate the unfamiliar with calm focus. And once you notice this pattern, another one becomes easier to see. The gatekeeper to this new fluid identity is your willingness to look absolutely foolish. Society trains you to value dignity over discovery. You are taught to stay quiet if you do not have the perfect answer, but growth requires a temporary suspension of your dignity. It demands that you step into rooms where you are the least knowledgeable person. Think about the massive opportunities you have quietly killed in your mind simply because you were afraid of blushing, stuttering, or failing in front of an audience. The fear of external judgment acts as an invisible electric fence, keeping you confined to a tiny, safe pasture. You trade your ultimate potential for the fleeting comfort of not looking foolish to people who barely think about your existence anyway. But this is only the surface. The reality is that looking foolish is the mandatory entry fee for mastery. Every expert was once a beginner who was willing to look like an amateur. When you actively choose to embrace the awkwardness of learning, you strip the power away from your critics. You reclaim your emotional independence, establishing a boundary where your progress matters far more than their fleeting opinions. The next shift is simple, but not easy. You must transfer your loyalty from meticulousness to momentum. The good student obsesses over getting the details perfectly right before launching. They polish the edges while the core remains untested. But the real world moves too fast for absolute perfection. By the time you have crafted the flawless solution, the landscape has completely shifted and left you behind. This obsession with detail is an emotional shield. It feels like productive work, but it is often just sophisticated hiding. You tweak the design, rewrite the email, and adjust the plan endlessly because as long as you are working on it, you cannot be judged for the final result. You drain your most valuable resource, your daily energy, on trivial aspects that do not actually move the needle forward. The problem is not that you feel too much, it is that you keep obeying every feeling of anxiety. You must prioritize aggressive momentum over slow perfection. Build the messy prototype. Send the imperfect pitch. Let the market and reality correct your course. Action generates its own clarity and speed. You will fix the small details along the way, but only if you actually generate the momentum to start moving. Slowly, your attention starts to return. As you prioritize action, you will realize the profound necessity of silence and inner order. When you are constantly reacting to the world, your mind is a chaotic marketplace of other people's demands. The student mindset trained you to seek external validation for every move. You look for the teacher to grade your paper, to tell you that you're doing a good job. Relying on external validation is an emotional trap. When your confidence is outsourced, it can be taken away at any moment by a single negative comment or a failed project. You become an emotional hostage to your environment. Your mood swings wildly based on the applause or the silence of the crowd. This external dependency drains your strength and leaves you incredibly vulnerable to manipulation. But peace does not come from avoiding pressure. It comes from responding differently. You must build an internal metric for success. You stop explaining yourself to people who do not understand your vision. You cultivate a quiet, grounded strength that does not require anyone else's applause. Your boundaries become firm, protecting your energy and focus, allowing you to operate from a place of deep, unshakable conviction. This is where the real change begins. With a fluid identity, a tolerance for looking foolish, and a deeply grounded inner silence, your entire relationship with failure transforms. It is no longer a devastating emotional blow that ruins your week. It becomes a sterile, objective event. You detach your personal value from the immediate outcome of your efforts, breaking the final chain of the good student syndrome. For most of your life, failure felt like a permanent tattoo, a mark of shame that proved you were not as capable as people thought. You would ruminate on your mistakes, replaying them at night, allowing the past to constantly poison your present moment. This mental loop of regret and self-punishment consumes the exact mental energy you need to actually rebuild and attempt the challenge a second time. That is where the pattern repeats. To escape it, you must ruthlessly redefine failure as merely a lack of alignment with reality. It is a mathematical equation that did not balance, nothing more. You review the data, you adjust the variables, and you execute again without the heavy emotional baggage. This is the quiet power of true responsibility. You take complete ownership of the result, fix it, and keep walking. As you detach your worth from the outcome, a profound lightness takes over. You enter the state of zero expectations. For decades, you carried the invisible weight of anticipating what your family, your peers, and society demanded of you. You tried to script the future perfectly so no one would be disappointed, but this control is an illusion that drains your vitality and limits your movement. Operating under heavy expectations turns your life into a performance. You choose safe careers, standard relationships, and predictable routines because they guarantee a passing grade from the audience. You sacrifice the wild, authentic core of who you are just to maintain the applause. The tragedy is that you end up living a highly functional, completely miserable existence built for someone else. This is the quiet trap. You must systematically drop the need to meet the imaginary standards of people who are not living your life. When you expect nothing to be perfect, and you stop demanding that the world hand you a specific result, you become dangerous in the best way possible. You act purely out of purpose, moving with a calm, unpredictable freedom. The next shift is simple but not easy. You must officially close the textbook and step into the laboratory. The school system convinced you that reality was a rigid structure of right and wrong answers, but a master views reality as a sandbox. Every interaction, every business attempt, and every creative project is just a hypothesis waiting to be tested against the elements. The good student paralyzes themselves by trying to guarantee the success of the experiment before it even begins. They fear that a negative result means they are incompetent. But in a laboratory, a failed experiment is a massive victory because it eliminates a false path. Holding on to the fear of a negative result means you will never mix the chemicals. You will just stare at the safety manual forever, and this is where clarity begins. Stop looking for the ultimate correct answer and start generating high-quality feedback. Launch the idea before it feels entirely ready. Let the friction of the real world show you the flaws in your design. Life drastically rewards those who iterate quickly, adjust without ego, and treat every stumble as essential data for the next massive leap. And once you notice this pattern, another one becomes easier to see. True mastery has absolutely nothing to do with a flawless streak. Society paints a picture of success as a clean, straight line pointing upward. You assume the people at the top got there because they never made a misstep. This illusion makes your own journey feel incredibly messy and inadequate by comparison. The reality behind closed doors is brutally different. The individuals who possess quiet, unbreakable power are covered in the invisible scars of countless miscalculations. They endured public embarrassment, financial loss, and creative ruin. While the perfectionist was carefully protecting their delicate hands, the master was eagerly getting theirs dirty, learning the true texture of their craft. You thought you needed more motivation. You needed less noise. Mastery is not the avoidance of errors, it is the aggressive accumulation of corrected mistakes. It is the deep cellular knowledge of what does not work. You must embrace the messy, chaotic process of getting good at something. Let your work be imperfect, let it be flawed, and let it be the honest foundation of your eventual greatness. Slowly, your attention starts to return. The most liberating moment in this entire journey happens in the silence immediately following a massive failure. You spend your entire youth running from the possibility of a complete collapse. You build walls, you hoard resources, and you compromise your dreams, all to ensure that the worst-case scenario never actually reaches your doorstep. But eventually, despite your best efforts, the floor drops out. You fail the project, you lose the position, or you face the public embarrassment you feared most. And in the immediate aftermath, as the dust settles, a stunning realization washes over you. You look around the wreckage and realize that you're still breathing. The anticipation of the fall was 1,000 times more painful than the impact itself. This is not discipline. This is self-respect. Once you survive the exact thing you were desperately trying to avoid, the fear completely loses its psychological grip on you. You realize your capacity to endure is far greater than your mind predicted. This creates a terrifyingly calm confidence. You walk into the next arena knowing that even if it burns to the ground, you know exactly how to rebuild from the ashes. We arrive at the final, unavoidable truth. The system lied to you about what it means to fail. A bad grade, a bankrupt business, or a rejected proposal are not true failures. They are simply the harsh, necessary friction of a life actually lived. They are the admission tickets to the arena. True failure looks entirely different, and it is entirely silent. The only failure that actually matters is the failure of omission. It is arriving at the final chapters of your life with a pristine, unblemished record, only to realize you never truly stepped onto the battlefield. It is the agonizing regret of the person who played it so incredibly safe that they managed to survive their life without ever actually living it. That quiet realization is the ultimate tragedy. But here's the part people usually miss. You still have time to choose your pain. You can choose the sharp, temporary pain of taking a risk, falling short, and rebuilding. Or you can choose the dull, chronic, lifelong ache of wondering what you could have become if you had only let go of your need to be perfect. The choice is yours, and the clock is quietly ticking. The illusion of the good student was designed to keep you manageable, predictable, and quiet. It taught you to fear the very mechanism that creates greatness, the willingness to be wrong. But the real world does not belong to the flawless. It belongs to the resilient. It belongs to those who have the audacity to step outside the protective glass of perfection and engage with the chaotic, raw reality of life. You must stop waiting for a passing grade from an invisible authority. The exam is over, the laboratory is open. Strip away the heavy armor of your ego, embrace the vital data hidden within your mistakes, and start generating the bold momentum your potential demands. Your life will transform the moment you decide that acting with courage is infinitely more important than acting with certainty. If this message resonated with your internal compass, subscribe to the channel. We will continue to dismantle the illusions that hold you back and build the quiet strength you need to move forward.